Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is our Recruiters Get Real panel with our great alumni. We're going to focus today on the job search. We have three great guests with us today. My name is Zach Wartzel. I am the manager of experiential learning for the Bauer College, and I also am the career counselor for undergraduate marketing and entrepreneurship. And I will moderate today's panel. So I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start with Paul.
Hello, guys. My name is Paul Sarrapy. I graduated December 2019, long time ago already. I started working at Deloitte February of this year because it got pushed 1 year because of COVID. But I finally started on February, and I'm currently working on the Oracle supply chain aspect. And I will turn it over to Michael.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Fulfs. I graduated December of 2020. Go Cougs. I worked for Kellogg's. Started in January, and I'm one of their sales representatives in the Orlando, Florida area. I'll go ahead and pass it to Salman.
Hey, everyone. My name is Salman. I just graduated this past May. Graduated with a degree in finance, and I haven't started working yet. But I'll be starting in August with American Express on their corporate strategy team.
Cool. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I think you all have really great insight to share with our students about your job search. So first off, can you all describe your job search in 3 words? What would those words be and why? And what would you say you learned from your job search experience? And we'll jump in with Michael.
Sure. So if I had to describe it in 3 words, it would be probably challenging, rewarding, and educational. My search for a job was mostly actually during COVID, and it was turning an internship and like getting an internship with Kellogg's, and then doing that, and then going through the process of negotiating and really kind of hammering out the details. Learned a ton through it, going through with Kellogg's. Paul, how about you?
For me, it was completely different, obviously, because thankfully, I was already hired before COVID was a thing. But for me, it was also challenging because I didn't have an internship before, like in the US, because I'm originally from Mexico. So it was harder for me I have a green card, but it was definitely harder because everyone was asking if I was gonna need a sponsorship and stuff like that. But it was just different. But still, it was definitely just in 3 words. It'll be hard, and hard, because it was definitely just challenging. But I got it done, and I know the UH. There's a lot of people that are not from the US. So if I was able to do it, I feel like you guys can too. You just have to be a little bit more annoying in LinkedIn. I was very annoying in LinkedIn. I cannot stress that enough. I will message people from all over the place, not only Houston, but I was like messaging managers from like Atlanta and Florida and stuff like that, just to get some insight and get my name out there. So that was my story. And Salman?
Yeah, so 3 words is tough because it's such a long process. But I think a good summary of it would be ups and downs, because it's quite the roller coaster. You spend a lot of time, you go to career fairs, you network with people, and you get an interview at a really great company. And then you go through the first round interview and the second round interview, and you get a super day. And then after spending 5 hours interviewing, they've narrowed down from like 1,000 applicants, and they end up taking like 2 for the job, and you don't get it. So that's a big up, and then a down. So I think that's definitely something that happens quite a bit with a lot of people. And so that's kind of the summary there. But through it all, you definitely learn in the ups, and then when you get the rejection, you learn from that as well. And I think we'll talk about rejection a little bit more later on. but definitely ups and downs for me.
Cool, thank you guys. I think it's super helpful. Building off something that Paul talked about, can you all talk about how you utilize networking? And did you find it important in landing your job? And maybe how would you recommend going about networking as both a current student and also as an alumni as well? If Salman, did you want to tackle that one first?
Sure. So I think networking is extremely important. For me, it was crucial. I think it depends, especially on if the company that you want to work at has a lot of, University of Houston Cougars, if they traditionally come and recruit at the career fairs. So then networking becomes a little bit less crucial. But if you want to go to a different city, you want to do something like what Paul did in terms of like coming as an international student, or you want to work at a company where no Cougar has ever been hired, networking is extremely crucial. So for me, the first step I usually do is go on LinkedIn, try to figure out if there's anyone from the University of Houston that works at that company. If so, shoot them a message, try to get on their calendar, either take them out for coffee pre-COVID or just a Zoom call now. If there's nobody from U of H, try to find someone in the Houston area, try to find someone that went to the University of Texas, A&M, something like that, find some common ground, and try to, connect through that. And if that doesn't work, then it's just going to be a cold reach out, and you just hope for the best and hope they actually respond to you. And at that point, it just becomes a numbers game. So if you send out 10 messages, don't expect more than like 1 or 2 responses. And so you'd be cognizant of that. So if you want to talk to people at 10 different companies, you got to send out like 100 messages. So that's just something to think about. What about you, Michael?
For me, networking was probably one of the biggest reasons that I got this job. When I was an undergrad, I was fortunate enough to work on a market research project for Kellogg's. And through that, I got to meet everybody in the Houston team. And then from there, I expanded out towards people in Texas, people in the South, people at headquarters. And through all of that, I was able to, when it came time to interview for the position for the internship, I was able to go in and talk to them and say, hey, if you were looking to hire an intern, what would you want? How can I help, prepare myself best for this? Funny enough, the first time I actually didn't get it, but I was able to then go back to my network and say, hey, look, this is what happened. What are y'all seeing? How can I make myself better? And so getting through that network and getting to talk to people and get myself in front of them and show the eagerness that I had to work for this company really helped me set myself up for success. Paul, what are your thoughts?
For me, it was the same. Like, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, since it's the getting real. I was never the brightest kid in the classroom. Like, I was never the smartest kid, the best GPA. Don't get me wrong. I had a very good GPA. I graduated with the honors, but I was still not the smartest one. Like, you can tell when you're in a room and you're just, there's several people that are just smarter, just better than you at one class or whatever stuff. But one of my strengths was always the networking and being social and happy and talking to people and getting, I'm very good at finding that common ground with other people. And for me, that was it. To land my job, I found common ground with people that work there. One project manager and one alumni that she's Maria, and maybe a lot of people know her, but she helped me a lot into getting into Deloitte. But it was me just looking for answers and being annoying, just being there like, hey, you did it, I want to do it too, I know I'm capable. So you just have to put yourself in that position to people just, I will say, not to like you, but to notice you. It's like, okay, he really wants it, or she really wants it. So put yourself in that position so people that you're networking with are like, okay, I want to help this kid or this guy, this girl, just because he is showing the interest in the job. And I think that's what did it for me, to at least get that interview.
Cool. thank you guys. I've had a lot of really good questions coming in from students. A couple of questions were based around how would you guys recommend students use their experience as a leverage if they wanted to branch out to opportunities that are maybe not 100% specific towards their major? I know this is something that Paul did, so maybe he wanted to focus on that, and then if Michael and Salman had any view on that also, they can hop in also.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely start with that one. I majored in supply chain management, and even though in Deloitte I'm in the supply chain management practice, right now I haven't done anything related to supply chain. I've done a lot of finance, accounting, and stuff like that. And what I did in my interviews is you always want to look at what they are asking for, and make your resume. I always send a different resume to a different company. It was never the same one. Depending on what they were doing, I would change some words and try to put my experiences into the perspective of what they were looking for. So for Deloitte, I knew I was gonna be, I want to be a consultant, right? So what I did was I knew I was gonna be talking to a lot of people, a lot of different team members, different projects, different clients, and stuff like that. So what I did, it was like my only experience, since I didn't have like an internship in the US. It's I used my Aeropostale cashier experience, and I was like working there. I learned how to talk to people, different kinds of people, different ethnicities, blah blah blah. I still work with numbers. I was always trying to find that common ground with people and stuff like that. And with my other internship that was in Mexico, it was I had the opportunity to travel. So I was like, I'm used to the traveling to other places. You always have to, with what you have, I'm pretty sure everyone has a little bit, at least something that you can use and change a little bit, just so you are more relatable to the job that they are asking for or what you're looking for. You always have a chance to move around your resume and just to make it look pretty for the employer. Michael?
Yeah, I think that's actually the most succinct way to put it. It really is honing in on transferable skills. Whenever I was a student, I had 3 different internships, and granted, I was a marketing major, and they were all like in the sphere of marketing, but it was all really different sections of marketing. One of them was like digital marketing. One of them was just hard analytics, and then I had my Kellogg's one, which was sales. And what it really took for me to be able to get this was I had to find the kind of the commonalities between what Kellogg's was looking for and what I'd done in the past, and said like, okay, cool. So, we're looking at a numbers heavy job. In my analytics role, I wasn't using the technologies that y'all were using, but I was using similar ones. And here's what I learned and how I learned how to do it. It's really showing off that you have the kind of common skill set, and then that you're willing and eager to learn the individual tools in the next role. How about you, Salman?
Yeah, really well said, both of you. I'd have to agree with everything that's been said. For me, an example of kind of transitioning and using transferable skills for an opportunity that I wanted was when I was trying to intern at a tech company. So I previously interned at a bank. I had always done finance related things, but I wanted to try out like tech and working at a technology company. And even though tech companies have non-technical roles, they still usually look for some proficiency in like coding and programming and things like that, just so you have an understanding of how the company works and their services. So my junior year, I wanted to intern at Amazon, and I had only worked in finance related roles. And so in my interviews, I emphasized my like database classes that I took in Bauer, and like the Excel classes and things like that. And they did ask in the interviews like, hey, do you know SQL? Do you know R? Like, what's your coding experience? And I was honest with them, and I said, hey, I have some exposure to SQL and R. I've seen it being used in my internships, but I haven't actually used it myself. But I'm more than willing to learn it for the internship, either before or during the internship. And I think that was good enough. And first day on the job, my manager was like, hey, I know you don't know SQL, so I can do that part for you. and you can I'll give you the the output, and you can model in Excel if you want. And I asked him if I could take a week or two and learn SQL and actually apply on the job. And so he was like, yeah, go ahead. So I spent a couple of weeks after my internship to learn SQL and actually apply to the job. And so that was an opportunity where I might have been disqualified because I didn't have that proficiency, but because I showed that I was eager to learn it on the job, they accepted that, and it worked out well.
Cool, thank you. I think, yeah, that's all really helpful advice. So a question came in that I think it'd be interesting to get your inputs on. So how did you all balance different hiring timelines? So there's some industries that hire early, some industries hire late. Did you know what you wanted going into it? But how did you balance those things to kind of get the opportunity that you wanted? Michael, did you want to start first on that one?
Sure. Yeah, I can go ahead. I was very fortunate that Kellogg was my top company. And so it was admittedly a little nerve-wracking because I got done with my internship and then just kind of didn't hear from HR for 2 or 3 months. And so I would reach out and go, hey, have you had any decisions? What's the update, without being like too annoying about it. But at the time I was starting to kind of feel out some other contacts that I had and see what was there. And then fortunately I got an offer, and then there was another waiting period between getting the verbal offer and the written offer. So I might not be the best one for that, but it's kind of one of those things where sometimes it is a waiting game, and it really is just going to depend on your industry and what you want. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same. I did have my interviews during finals week, so I slept, honestly, that week I slept probably like 4 hours total, because I was studying for my finals and then studying for the first interview. Right after my first interview, I went back to school. I drove back to school, and it was raining, and even my professor was like laughing. I was like, what happened to you? Because I was wearing my little penguin outfit, my little suit and stuff, but I was all like wet, and he was like, hey, what's up? What happened? I was like, I just had an interview. So he actually moved my exam for like the next day. It's like, hey, take time to like study. So I would definitely recommend, if you're in that situation, don't be like me, and actually tell your professors that you have an interview coming up. They will be super nice. At least mine were super nice, and they will move my exams a little bit just so I could like study for my interview, prepare for my interview, but also be able to take my exam, because that week was horrible, super horrible for me. And after actually getting my first interview, I took my exam, and after my exam, they called me. I was like, hey, we need you tomorrow for the second round. And I was like, oh my God, like I need my bed. So I went home, slept for like 3 hours, then started preparing for the second one, because it was the first time I was going to take a case interview. I don't know if there's practice now for for those, but at my time they were not. So I had to prepare a little bit more for the case interviews, and it was hell. It was horrible. I hated that week so much. But then after that, it took like a week and a month for them to like reach back and tell me if I had the offer. So I was still applying to other places, even though Deloitte was definitely my number one. And I had other 2 interviews in between, but I was still waiting for Deloitte, and luckily it hit. And how about you, Salman? What was your experience?
I think this is a really great question to whoever asked. I think a lot of students miss out on opportunities because they're not aware of timelines. So I recruited for banking, consulting, and tech companies, and they all have very different timelines in terms of like when internship applications open, when is the expectation for you to like submit your resumes, when do you do your networking, when are the actual interviews. But the benefit is that every single year they're the same time. Like you can predict when the interview for a specific company will be based on last year's interviews. And so just talking to, if you want to do investment banking, if you want to do consulting, just talking to people in the industry, figuring out when's the best time to start reaching out to people, when's the best time to drop your resumes, when is the best time to apply, things like that is extremely crucial. And start early, because I mean, there are junior year internships that open up after freshman year for some investment banks, sometimes after sophomore year. So it's like over a year in advance sometimes. And so, especially like exploratory programs and things like that. So it's extremely crucial to know the timelines and be aware of them, especially if you want to interview for like consulting and banking or consulting and tech. Then it's really important because you're juggling two different timelines. So yeah, just being aware of it, talking to people in the industry, and looking at last year's interviews to figure out what this year's interviews will look like.
Cool. Thank you, guys. So I got a question that came in about what advice would you give to F1 students who don't have enough experience before applying for jobs and internships? But I also might say you could open that up a little bit, but what advice would you give to students who feel like they may just not have enough experience, whether it's a F1 student or not? Any thoughts on that? Paul, did you want to start on that one?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, completely honest with you, whoever asked the question, and to the other students, get used to rejection. Just get used to it, get comfortable with it. It's okay. It's gonna happen. We all went through it, even if you're with a lot of internships or not internships. Get used to it. Like I can tell you, I got around, there was like 200 plus rejections. So I was applying the whole time. Applying. It was a no after no after no after no after no after no. I mean, at that time, I'm a very happy person. As you can see, I have a lot of energy, ADHD energy through the roof. But it was like, at one point, it's gonna, it's gonna wait. And you're gonna be like, oh my God, like I'm not good enough. Like, why if this is not for me and stuff like that? Don't do that. I can tell you from experience, you're just gonna put yourself in a horrible position. What I started doing was just learning from that experience. I even went to internships. The internships to interviews that I didn't want to work there, but I even used those experiences just to practice my interview skills. And if I landed a job there, it's okay. I'll start from the bottom a little, I'll get some experience under my belt and then move up. And it's okay. Just get used to rejection. It happens. You're not the only one. If you're going through that right now, it's okay. Believe me, you're not the only one. A lot of people are going through it, and it's going to happen. So just get used to it, because there's a lot of people applying for the same position. Just try to make, if you get rejected, I will, even if you can, reach out and be like, hey, what's wrong with my resume, or what was wrong with my interview and stuff like that. Just get feedback is always good, even if it's bad negative feedback. For me, feedback is always good, even if they're bad at giving it or they're mean at giving it. Feedback for me is always great, coming from whoever it is. And use your Rockwell Center. Believe me, it's more powerful than what you think it is. It really helps a lot. Even for looking at your resume for the first time, they found out about a lot of my grammar mistakes that I was just sending that resume and I didn't even know about it. And having Rockwell there, I never went and sent my resume to my senior year. And I was like, maybe that's why I was not getting internships, because it was all over the place. So go to the Rockwell Center, use you're paying for it, you're paying on your tuition, use it. It's there, it's free. They're helping you. And that's my 2 cents on that.
And we didn't even pay Paul to say all those things.
Yeah. No, it's honestly, it's just from experience. I got rejected a lot. So I would just say get comfortable with it. It's okay. Michael?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not an F1 student, I believe is the term for it for foreign students. But one of the things that I can say, like Paul said, get comfortable with getting rejected. There will be some companies that you have your whole heart into it. You will think you absolutely nailed everything. And you'll walk out of there, chest all puffed up going like, yeah, I got this job. And then 2 weeks later, you'll get a call going, hey, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, but we're moving forward with someone else. And like Paul said, it's a really good opportunity if you can get a hold of whoever's the decision maker for that to go, hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me interview, step one. And step two, ask them, what can I do better? You know, what can make me a stronger candidate? And a lot of times seeing that and like saying that, they'll look at you and go, oh, okay, cool. So this person really cares. You know, I want to help this person out. Even if they don't end up in my company, I want to help them out. One of the other things that I think is really important is that when you get into that conversation about, you know, how can I do better, actually do it. You could be like me, where for the first 2 years of school, I would go through and I would ask, and they would say, you need to do this. We need this skill. And I would say, okay. And then I'd see them next year and they'd be like, oh, you still haven't done that? And I'd be like, ah. So when you're asking for that advice, if you think it's going to help in what you want for your long-term goal, it's probably something to look forward to. Salman?
Yeah, very well said. I think the common theme here is get comfortable with rejection. I'm not an F1 student either, but I've also gotten rejected over 100 times. And so it's definitely tough. And that's why I said ups and downs is my 3-word summary. But, you know, Michael is definitely right. I think the most valuable thing I did during my junior year when I was applying for a bunch of places was to ask for feedback. So if I had a super day somewhere, I would consciously get comfortable with one person specifically and try to like be a little bit more casual with them throughout the interview process so that I can like kind of reach out to them after the interviews and ask for feedback, because a lot of times companies actually don't give feedback because of liability issues, especially like top banks and consulting firms. They'll just say, yeah, sorry, apply next year. But if you have someone that kind of cares for your success within the company, they'll actually make the time to speak with you. And I got rejected in my junior year by one of my top choices. And I'm still friends with a guy who rejected me almost 2 years ago. And he gave me great feedback, and I used that feedback for my full-time recruiting and had a lot more success. So definitely great advice. I'd follow that and implement the feedback they actually give you, like Michael said.
And if I can add a little bit more to that, like I just came to my mind again with a get comfortable with rejection. After 2 years of like me graduating almost, I still got an email. It was like a couple months ago from Accenture saying, thank you. And I was like, bro, I applied like 2 years ago, but it's like, they're still coming and I'm already like full employed. It's like, just so you guys have an idea of like how it works. Sometimes they won't answer you. You will ask for feedback and they won't. And it happens. Just don't feel down. It's like, hey, I was not good enough. Blah, blah. Don't do that. That's the best advice I can give you for that. Just don't do that.
Cool. Thank you guys. Really, really good advice there. So I got a question that's sort of on the flip side of some of the things that you all were talking about, but I think is relevant here. Have any of you had to decline an offer before? If so, what advice would you have about declining that offer, but still maintaining that good relationship with the recruiter or the company? I saw Paul was shaking his head. So did you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I was telling you when I was going through the process with Deloitte, I was still interviewing with other smaller companies, and they gave me an offer. They didn't show me the number or anything, but I was like, hey, they extended the invitation to come talk to the top manager at the firms, like, hey, he would like to talk to you about, so he can probably give you an offer. And I had to tell him, like, hey, because the day before, like 2 days before that, I got the call from Deloitte, my number one choice, and they gave me the good news. So whenever they call me, I told them, I was super honest. You will always have to be grateful, but I mean, just like they rejected you, you have sometimes to be on that tough position to reject back. And I just told them straight up like, hey, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. I learned a lot. I would love to keep in contact because you never know. I mean, you don't want to burn bridges for sure because you never know what's gonna happen in a couple of years. But I was super grateful and just told them like, thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed a lot. I had a great experience talking to you guys, but I got an offer from my top choice that I accepted yesterday. I could tell they were not the happiest. It was like, hey, you're not even gonna listen to what our manager had to say. I was like, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I mean, at that point for me, it was just like that. Like, I'm sorry. I already made my decision. But again, thank you so much. And that's how I ended mine. I don't know if Salman or Michael have an experience with rejection as well.
I do have a funny story actually. So during my sophomore year, I got interested in consulting, and so I started making a list of all the consulting firms I'm interested in working at. And there was one firm in particular that was like a top choice for me. There was nobody at U of H that worked there. There was no Houston office, et cetera, et cetera. It was on the West Coast. And I basically reached out to I reached out to recruiters, reached out to people that worked there and didn't really get a response. And I tried for months and I finally got one person to respond to me, who was like a current intern and just got a full-time offer there. So he was kind enough to like, stick with me, teach me about the firm, et cetera, and like try to help me with my application for the firm. And then I reached out to a recruiter, finally got the recruiter to respond. And she was like, yeah, sorry, we only accept kids from like these 5 schools. And you're not one of those, you don't go to one of those 5 schools. And so our internship program is not for you. And I was like, okay. And then I continued to keep her updated throughout my junior year. And when it came to full-time, I was like, hey, by the way, I interned here my junior year. I'm looking forward to applying full-time, et cetera, et cetera. And I got on a phone call with her my senior year. And I was like, listen, this is my top choice. Like, if I get an interview, like I'll accept the kind of offer if it fits like what I'm looking for and stuff. And I finally ended up getting an interview there, and I got the offer. And then I also got the offer at another company, which I ended up wanting more at the end of the day. And it was like for a role that was a little bit more interesting to me. And so it was very awkward because I spent 2 years trying to get this interview. I finally got the offer, and then I had to turn them down. And so it was definitely a very weird situation. And I basically emailed her, requested for like a phone call, and told her over the phone instead of just over email to be a little bit more professional. And she was like, what was it that the other firm had that we didn't have, and things like that. And she was like, why'd you pick them over us, things like that. But at the end of the day, she was still like professional about it. And like, you can tell that it's not the most exciting news because now they have to go find someone else. But that's kind of how I dealt with it. And I was actually more worried about the guy who helped me for like 2 years, like networking and getting into the firm. And so when I went to California a few weeks ago, I actually met with him and got coffee with him, and now we're like friends. But he was the one that like invested the time for like almost 2 years to help me with my application and stuff like that. So keep it professional. Don't be scared to like be vulnerable and like let them know the situation is, and just be honest about it. I think the worst thing you can do is wait till the last minute and just like not show up, or just like ghost the company or something like that. So keep it professional and be honest, and you should be good.
Yeah, I think they both knocked it out of the park. And the keys to rejecting a company's offer is honesty, grace, and just an overall air of professionalism. Because at the end of the day, it is business. If you get something that's going to work better for you, and this other company has made this offer, you just need to say, hey, look, I really have enjoyed talking through this whole process with you. I just think this would be a better fit for me right now. One of the keys that I've found is that when you do this, it's going to be an awkward situation all around, especially if you're really, really far into the process. But one of the things is that you'll never know what's going to happen down the line. So you need to make sure you don't burn that bridge. You need to say, hey, look, this might not be the best fit right now, but I would love to stay connected and stay in communication. So that way later down the line, we can look at some options. Because in the most literal sense, 27 minutes after I got my offer from Kellogg, my number 2 company came to me and said, hey, we would love to bring you in for this interview. And of course, I'd already accepted my offer with my number 1. So I told them, hey, I appreciate it. But I'd spent, very similar to Salman, 2.5 years chasing this company, trying to get somebody to talk to. And it was kind of funny that just after, literally 27 minutes after I got my offer, they said, hey, we'd like to get you in for an interview. But you need to say, hey, look, I appreciate this. I've already accepted an offer, but later down the line, you never know.
Well, yeah, I think that's all super, super good advice. And we obviously, as career counselors, would agree with all the things that you were saying there. So I'm glad that you all were able to share that. So we had a student ask about negotiating salary for the first job out of college. Can any of you talk about negotiation? Is it common? Is it something that you can do in your first job out of college? And they also asked, is it something, does their previous jobs have any impact on that? Michael seems to really want to answer this question, so I'm going to hand it over to him.
I love negotiating. I'm that guy that will go to the car dealership and we'll negotiate all day long. So I'm really glad somebody asked this question, because this is something that I went through with Kellogg's. And one of the things that you have to, that is really good to ask, I'm not going to say you have to ask, but you should definitely ask, is this offer open to negotiation? Because some companies don't. Some companies do, but you won't know unless you ask. Because there are certain companies, one of my friends works for one now, that if you go in and they say, hey, we want to give you X dollars, and you say, well, I think I'm worth this. They'll say, no, the offer is X, take it or leave it. And it leaves kind of a bad taste in their mouth. But it really depends upon the company's culture. If the company is open to negotiating salary, one of the things you need to do before you come into that conversation is that you need to know, one, what the range is for salary for the industry. And you also need to have an understanding of internally in the company, if you can find any numbers about what a similar pay range would be for that role, you should have those numbers in mind, because there is nothing more uncomfortable than going into a salary negotiation and you overshoot by $50,000 or something. If you're way off, it's just, it's not going to work. So it's really good to have that idea of what you want, where you're going, and what you should be looking for. And when you're looking at those numbers, also make sure that you're taking into account how much the total package is, what the insurance look like, what the retirement contributions look like, what if there's stock purchase options, what that looks like, because that's part of your package. It's not all just dollars and cents and paycheck. At the end of the day, if you're going with some of these bigger companies or even smaller companies, they're going to say, look, we'll pay you X and here are the benefits on top of that. And if you can create a dollar estimate for that total package, that should be what you're negotiating, not just whatever the salary is. Anybody else want to pop in on that?
Yeah, Michael, you hit something really important, which is knowing which companies will be willing to negotiate and which don't. They're the top investment banks and consulting firms. They have very fixed salaries for their first year associate and second year associates across the country. So if you work in New York or if you work in Houston, you get the same salary, same benefits, same relocation, same everything. So it's pretty uncomfortable to kind of negotiate those. For example, if you work at Goldman Sachs, you're going to get what you get and you're not going to be able to ask for anything else. A lot of times with smaller companies, with startups, with things like that, you have a little bit more leverage because you have, especially if you have another offer in hand, it definitely does help. If you be like, hey, I really want to work at your company, but I have an offer that's X% higher. Is it possible to match it? Something like that. So when you have multiple offers, it definitely helps to be able to bring that into the negotiation and feel that out. But definitely knowing which companies negotiate, which don't, is extremely crucial.
Yeah, well, for me, it was to be honest with you guys, I did not even try. I got my offer. I was like, "Yep, I'll take it. Thank you." So I cannot give any advice there.
Yeah, and I think from the career counseling side, I think it is just important to ask is this open to negotiation? Because the answer is no unless you ask sometimes. So, or all the time. So I think that's an important piece to look at there. So I had a couple of questions coming in about what are the best ways for students to reach out to recruiters and build relationships. So maybe can you all talk a little bit about that? Maybe how you utilize LinkedIn, those type of things. Paul, did you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I mean, what I usually did was you always get the name on the email. So first thing, we'll go to LinkedIn, try to see what they have, if you have any in common from previous jobs, schools, organizations, whatever. And sometimes I will take it a little further, and you can always go to Facebook. You have the name and everything, so you can go to Facebook, try to find something in common. I always try to find common ground before starting the conversation. But if you don't find any common ground, you can always start asking. Go to the company's website. I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do is go to the company's website, and there's a lot of stuff there you can ask, and you can learn about the company before even going to the interview or reaching out to someone. Even to know what are the main culture things, you can even start doing that. Like, hey, I saw your company has these 3 words for culture and stuff like that. I really find it interesting. Can you tell me more about it? How do you enjoy working there? Blah blah blah. There's a lot of questions you can do to start a conversation going. But if you can find some common ground, that will definitely help a lot. Salman?
Yeah, this is a really great question. I think the common ground thing is the number one most important part. A couple other things to think about. If you are going to reach out directly to a recruiter, the biggest mistake I see students doing is to write out an email or a LinkedIn message that's like detailing their whole life story and telling them everything that they want the recruiter to know about them. But recruiters don't have time for that, and they get a lot of messages. So really focus on keeping your message short and sweet. A few lines max. Try to get either a phone call or some action item to your email, or else it's just going to get ignored. If you are going to directly reach out to a recruiter, the strategy that I prefer is to actually reach out to people that are like 1 or 2 years into the company, so analysts or associates, because they've been in your shoes. They've been in college and they've tried to recruit and interview at that company, and they'll have a little bit more sympathy for you. So if you reach out to them, you'll get to learn about their interview process, get their advice, and then you can ask them to connect you to a recruiter. And I've seen the success rate for that skyrocket compared to me trying to reach out and cold email a recruiter. Because when it's an internal memo that the recruiter gets from an analyst or an associate, like, hey, I talked to the student, he seems like a great fit for the company, the recruiter will reach out to you and set up a call and stuff like that. So that seems to work a lot better in my experience. Michael?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the same. Most of my networking, admittedly, at the time, it wasn't really like actively trying to get a job or get a foot in the door. I was just curious. I'm a very curious person, so I'll talk to anybody about anything. And I would see a job on LinkedIn and be like, hey, that looks kind of interesting. Cool. Let me go figure out what that's about. And you get to have these really cool conversations with people. And it's very much a just reach out and say, hey, my name is Michael. I'm a student. Play the student card, because everyone feels sympathy for students. They've all been there. They've all been in those shoes. And just say, hey, I saw your job that you do this. This sounds really cool. Can I borrow 15 minutes of your time, or 30 minutes, or whatever you want to ask for, and just talk to you about your job? I would love to learn more. And just showing that, if you have that really good conversation you hit it off really well, that's your foot in the door. It might not be immediate. I think Salman said it took 2 years with one of the companies he was trying to get into, but having those like relationships be built is hyper critical to all of it.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's all super good advice. A question came in on how did you all think COVID affected your job search? I think that might be an interesting thing to look at. Another thing to maybe add to that was a lot of times with COVID, it may have been more difficult for students to get experience. So maybe if you also wanted to focus on what advice you'd have for students who may not have a lot of experience on their resume, how they could talk about the experience they do have in the best way possible. Michael, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I can go for that. When I first got to Bauer, I came in as a transfer student. So I was like a sophomore and a half, I guess, not quite a sophomore, not quite a junior. And I had zero experience because I transferred in from the music school. So this question really hits home for me, in that you've got to figure out kind of creative ways to showcase your skills. And you've got to find, I guess, less than traditional ways of doing things. So right now with COVID, we have this fantastic opportunity where there are a lot of people that are spending, a lot of time at home, a lot of times on their computers right here. And there's a whole wide world of resources that you can learn skills from. For example, with being a University of Houston student, you get a free membership to LinkedIn Learning, and LinkedIn Learning will teach you any and everything in the world. It's really impressive. I went through and looked because I wanted to sharpen up my Excel skills, and I wanted to kind of start teaching myself SQL. And I was just curious what else was on there. You can learn photography. You can learn like rig lighting, like the lights for concerts. You can do that. You can do like the basics of engineering. You can learn literally anything on there or on YouTube, or the assorted different skill academies. If you're in marketing, there's a whole list of certifications that you can get from Google for digital marketing. And there's not many other times that you're going to be, just stuck at home. And so this is a really good time to kind of sharpen up on those skills, and you'll make up what you don't have in experience for what you do have in skill sets and certifications. And a lot of the recruiters that I've talked to, whenever I say that I'm, self-taught with the different Adobe suites of softwares, and I'm teaching myself SQL and all of these other conversation points, they see that as, oh, this person is motivated enough to go gain the skills by themselves, as opposed to I had to learn this as part of my degree. And so that really can help kind of bridge the gap that experience would normally be there for. Salman, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I think gaining skills is extremely crucial. It shows that you are, willing to learn, be curious, and, add something to your resume and essentially help the organization that you want to join. Another way that you can gain experience. So experience isn't just internships. If you've ever wanted to do research, if you ever wanted to start your own company, if you ever wanted to do something on the side like that, I think COVID has given a great opportunity to a lot of people to have that extra time, be at home, have the flexibility to like fit in some extra personal projects or side projects in their work day or in their school day. So I've seen a few people that have done some really impressive stuff with their time during COVID, and kind of launching their own career platforms or whatever on LinkedIn. And I think that looks really great when you're applying for jobs. It shows that you took advantage of the time and you pursued something that you're personally interested in, and that can substitute an internship at a big company. And I've seen that happen, and I've seen recruiters really like that.
Yeah, I mean, just like Michael said too, for me, I was hired before COVID, right? But they pushed my starting date a whole year because of COVID. So I've never been to the office or met anyone there. But what I did that year, it was, even though I was already in the company, I used a lot of the LinkedIn resources. I was not a student anymore, so I had to use my 14-day free trial, but it was more than enough time to learn Excel a little bit better and SQL and a lot of other things, and Power BI. I knew I was going to work in Oracle, so I started learning about Oracle because I've never touched it. When I got the offer, I was kind of scared. I was like, I mean, I have SAP, but I don't know anything about Oracle. So I started learning about Oracle. And honestly, YouTube. YouTube is amazing and it's free. People underestimate the power of YouTube, but there's a lot of people making money uploading videos of how to do stuff. So they're getting paid just for teaching you free stuff. So definitely use it. I used it a lot. I still use it because, like I told you guys, I'm working on something completely not related to my major. So every day or every week I get a new thing that I'm like, I don't know what it is. So I go to YouTube or Google. Google's my best friend, and I just learned it. You have to learn. You have to be coachable.
Cool. Thank you, guys. So I just got a couple of questions that came in I think are similar, and I think it'd be an interesting piece for us to look at now that we're getting a little closer in, but I think it's an interesting piece to look at. Can you all talk about what you think are some of the biggest mistakes that you know of that students can make in the job search, or things you might want to avoid in reaching out and networking? So either one of those topics, just what are the things that students shouldn't do in their job search? Paul, did you want to take that one first?
Yeah, to be honest, don't reach out and ask about salary first. That's a big no. I mean, it's probably common sense, but just out there, if you were thinking about that, just don't do it. It's gonna look bad. Don't ask. Don't be. Your first question should not be about money and stuff like that. And honestly, just for me, was always be yourself. Don't try to fake it. Don't try to lie about it. Just be yourself. And to be honest, I think that's it for me. Michael?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think all people should avoid when networking, or in the most literal sense, any interaction with a human being at all, don't come off as like car salesman-y about stuff. Don't like be braggadocious. Nobody likes that. And if you're trying to network with somebody and learn about their job as a way to get kind of in the door with the company, you shouldn't spend the whole interview telling them how great you are, especially if it's not even an actual job interview. If it's just you like talking to somebody who works there, you don't need to tell them how great you are. You don't need to do anything like that, because they're just going to come back at the end of it and be like, all this guy did was talk about himself. I don't think he's actually interested in the company. I think he's just interested in inflating his own ego. Salman, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, in the same vein there, I think students forget that the people that they're talking to, either during networking or an interview, they're still people at the end of the day. You know, they go home, they have dinner with their family, they go to the gym. I think it helps the nerves a lot if you realize that, and realize that you're just having a conversation with a person. Think about what you would want to hear, or how you would want to be spoken to if you were in their shoes. And I think that helps a lot. Also, if you go on a networking call with someone like in the evening and you're spending 15-20 minutes of their time to, you know, get to connect with them, try to like be a little bit more casual if the person gives you those signals, and just be yourself, because at the end of the day, that person is taking a break from their day to talk to you. And sometimes people just don't want to talk about their job for like 20 minutes. Maybe they want to talk about the ski trip that they took over Thanksgiving break, or they want to talk about their weekend or whatever. Give them the opportunity, and you'll actually stand out, because most of the students will come on there and be like, hey, thanks for your time, blah, blah, blah. These are 3 questions I have, and just can you answer them? And then they'll go on with their day. But if you kind of be a little more personable and kind of show interest in their life, and kind of just ask them some of those kind of questions, I think that's how you can stand out and start building those genuine connections, so that when it does come time to interview, you're able to ask for like referrals, and you're able to ask for them to put in a good word for you and things like that.
Just to add to that, to what Salman said, just a true story about me. When I was networking to get my job, I had a little 15-minute session with the project manager director at the firm, and we did not even talk about work. I asked him about, we started talking about hobbies and stuff like that, and he said soccer and fishing. So we started talking about that whole thing, and when he came to my second interview, it was him giving it. So he like saw me and immediately was like, hey, I remember you. And I did not even have an interview. It was just talking about like, hey, how's Mexico doing right now and stuff like that. He asked me like, I think 3 things. I was like, why Deloitte, or why do you want to be here and stuff like that. But the other 35 minutes, we talk about literally just life and fishing and soccer, just because he remembered me. He was like, oh, look at that. And I think, to be honest, I think that did it. Just not talking about the interview questions. So great, Salman, great answer there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you both made. Getting to know people as people that handles some of the, do I want to spend 40 hours a week with you pieces of the job search versus the, can you do the job pieces? And both of those are really important. We're getting really close to 2 o'clock. There is a question I wanted to ask rapid fire before we got to our last ending question, because I got a bunch of questions about following up. If each of you just kind of really quickly could talk about, when's it appropriate to follow up? How do you not be annoying following up? Can each talk about follow up with companies, kind of rapid fire, just advice on that. Michael, do you want to start first there, or Salman?
Sure, I can go first.
Okay.
During my interview, I always ask, what is your time frame for making the decision on this? And I take a little mental note of that. And so as far as following up goes, I do it either the day of, a couple hours later, or by 24 hours at the max. I'll send a thank you note saying, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation during the interview. Thank you for teaching me about some little thing that I learned during that interview process. And then if I haven't heard back in whatever that time frame is from the recruiters or the company or whoever is the point of contact, I'll shoot out an email saying, at the end of it saying, hey, I really appreciated taking the time to get to talk to y'all. I was just curious to see if you'd reached a decision yet. Hope to hear back from you soon, Michael. And then that shows that you're still, engaged with the company. You're still actively looking for it, but you're not going, hire me, please hire me.
That's perfect. I think following up is crucial. I've even heard to the extent that sometimes people in higher levels, like vice presidents, directors, they don't respond to the first message and they wait to see if you'll follow up, because if you're not going to follow up, they probably don't want to waste their time with someone that's not really that eager to work there. And so I've seen it all the time where I'll send a LinkedIn message. They'll accept my request or my connection request and not respond to my initial message. Then I usually wait about a week and send a one-liner and be like, hey, thanks for connecting earlier last week. Do you have a couple minutes sometime in the coming days? That's it. And see if they respond. After maybe 2 or 3, I'd say probably like 2 follow-ups, I'd probably just leave it and try someone else because they just may be too busy. They might not really check LinkedIn, etc. Following up got me the job that I'm gonna be accepting in August. I reached out to a bunch of people on the Amex team, and only one person accepted my request on LinkedIn, and they didn't respond to me. And then I followed up with him one time, like the following week, and that led to a 20-minute phone call, which led to an interview that same day, which led to a super day the following week, and that's how I got the offer. So if I hadn't followed up with that one guy, I most likely wouldn't have gotten an interview there.
Yeah, definitely don't be shy or scared to follow up. It's okay. It's expected. And just be friendly and professional. I will say there's not a wrong time to follow up because I was very annoying the whole time, but not just be able to also read the room, read the, I mean, if you already met with that person, kind of, get the perspective, like how annoying can you be? Because it happens to me too. Like a lot of students reach out after these uh, sessions, and sometimes they just message me at the wrong time, but I'm like very busy at work or like doing something or like on a meeting that I don't respond. I see it, but I just don't respond because I'm doing something else, and then I just forget. And then they reach out again. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. And it happens. Just remember that people are busy and they're human and they forget. So don't be scared to follow up again a couple times. Just like Salman said, if they don't respond after the third, fourth time, just try someone else.
I think that's great advice. I'd like to end with if you all could just give what you think is your biggest piece of advice for students going into their job search, whether it be for internships or full-time jobs. What would be your one biggest piece of advice that you'd give them? Salman, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I think just, there's been a common theme here, but don't be afraid of rejection. You're going to get rejected. I got rejected a bunch. Paul got rejected a bunch. I'm sure Michael has dealt with it as well. And you're going to go through it. Take it as a learning opportunity. Take every interview as a learning opportunity, as like a practice round for, hey, if I don't get this one, I'll get the next one, or I'll get another interview, etc. So use the entire process as a learning opportunity. Keep your spirits up, and don't allow the outcome of your recruiting process to be a reflection of your worth or who you are, if you're smart enough, etc.
Yeah, I can go next. For internships, my best piece of advice is don't be afraid to try something new. Like I mentioned earlier, my different internships have all been in wildly different jobs. I had one that was a consulting firm. I had one that was oil and gas, and now I'm working for Kellogg's, which is consumer packaged goods, and completely different cultures. You learn stuff that you like and that you don't like. But like Salman said, don't be afraid to get a no. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of really nicely worded HR letters that the first sentence makes you feel like you're going to be a yes, but it's actually a no. But just don't get discouraged. One of the things that I've learned is that there's a right time and a right place for everything. And just because that's not the right time and right place right now doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
You guys couldn't say any better. I was gonna say the same thing. Get comfortable with rejection, because oh my God, it was one of the darkest places and times of my life so far. But it's okay. Definitely it gets better. You'll find something. Just keep working, keep learning, and be humble. Definitely be humble when talking to other people, because you're not the only one applying to that same position. So be humble about it. Don't feel like you're entitled to it just because you have a 4.0 or something. Remember, there's always going to be someone better and someone worse than you, and someone's going through the same stuff as you. So just stay calm. Try always to find opportunities to get better at something, learn something new. Just position yourself in a better place so you could be successful in whatever you're trying to do.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I think it was a great session today. Obviously, we went a couple of minutes over, so that means it went super, super well. And we had so many great questions from our students. I would also like to give my thanks to Michael, Salman, and Paul. Our Recruiters Get Real series will continue next week with Austin Close from Gartner. He's going to talk about how to land your dream job from his perspective. So again, we're super, super happy we had such great alumni with us today. If everyone can please give a thanks to our guests and have a great rest of the afternoon, and thank you for coming.